Hello there. Welcome to our midday musing on life and leadership. Today, our topic is going to be midlife reset. As we have been navigating mood shifts, brain fog, hot flashes, identity changes, or simply wondering what's happening to me. You're in the right place. The season of life is often misunderstood, dismissed, or even rushed. But here we slow down and we get honest and we get empowered because midlife isn't the beginning of decline, it is the beginning of becoming. Your brain is changing, your body is shifting. You don't have to walk through any of it alone. As a guide, we're bringing in a panel of experts who understand both the science as well as the lived experience of this transition. My name is Rita Lallman. I am a brain health trainer and a life coach, along with my co host, Dr. George, who is a professor and an author. At this time, I'm going to ask my co host, Pam, to introduce the panel.
Thank you, Rita, and welcome everyone to today's conversation. All around the world, women are telling us the same thing. I have no idea what is happening to me. Perimenopause, menopause hits our bodies, emotions, relationships, and even our sense of identity. Yet almost no one prepares us for it. So today, this is where we're going. First, we're going to unpack what's happening to us physically. Then we will talk about the emotional and grief layers. And we will explore what we can actually do. So this will be a practical time. And throughout, we'll look at how God meets us in the season and how we can support one another with wisdom and joy. So first, I want to introduce Dr. Penny Cox. Penny has lived an extraordinary life of service and leadership. She began her career as a medical doctor before serving full time in the ministry for several years. She later returned to clinical practice, working in OBGYN, including a menopause clinic, and earned diplomas in both OBGYN and sexual health. Her own challenging menopause deeply shapes the way she cared for women in her practice. Even now in retirement, she continues to support the National Health Service in UK and as a general practitioner appraiser while serving with her husband on the leadership team in her church. Penny brings a rare combination of medical expertise, spiritual insight, and lived experience, and we are honored to have her here. Next, I'm going to introduce Tammy Fleming. Tammy is an American expat living in Kiev, Ukraine. She has an extraordinary legacy of faith and leadership. She and her husband, Andy Fleming, helped plant 29 churches in Northern Europe and Eurasia. She is now a grief recovery method specialist and a specialist trainer, having walked hundreds through healing and even trained specialists across multiple countries. Tammy is a published author and recently co wrote a preteen novel to strengthen children's faith. Together, Penny and Tammy bring wisdom for both the body and the soul, and we could not imagine better guides. We're going to just begin with a question that has come up a lot. It's all about hormone replacement therapy. So, Penny, I'm going to ask you, can you tell us about HRT, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and guide us through that?
HRT, hormone therapy does not cure everything, but it can certainly go a long way to getting you some sanity back, maybe so that you can then engage with the other issues. I recognize in myself that in my mid 40s, I really struggled with anxiety and depression. I was getting really irritable and upset. I went to therapy, which helped a little bit. I went on to antidepressants, which helped a little bit. Side effects, which I found intolerable. And it was only a few years later when I got full on flushes that I saw HRT. And it was amazing. All my anxiety and depression improved. Sometimes it's like your body is, you have to be ready to experiment and try. You learn what you can, you address what you can, but you might have to be patient with yourself. And I would also throw in that it's important not to ignore physical symptoms because, and you have to work this through with your family doctor, I think, there are physical illnesses which can masquerade as menopause. And Tammy was sharing about feeling exhausted. Is a good time. It's not all going to be stress. You might, for example, have an underactive thyroid. You can expect your periods to misbehave, but if you get a lot of heavy bleeding and more frequent periods, sometimes that can be a sign of cancer in the womb. And I would say that get the checks on it. And when the serious condition has been eliminated, other than menopause, then you have options for HRT, but also look at how you manage that stress. You asked about the side effects or what are the disadvantages of a lot of scaremongering out there about HRT. There have been a number of major trials internationally which have really fed into this debate. There was a big trial in the US and a big trial in the States looking at literally millions of women. And every 5 years, more data is released from those trials. And in each time the data is released, we're able to refine what we understand about the long-term effects of HRT. It's probably the simplest way to look at it is that for women who take HRT for more than 5 years, there is a very slight increase in the risk of breast cancer. But I would like to get into perspective. So the risk goes up. The similar risk, for example, to if you like a glass of wine a few times a week, or if you're obese, you're carrying extra weight and you fall into that obese category, which depends on your BMI, and that varies according to our ethnic makeup. But it's not a huge risk. And for many women, the ability to carry on working, the ability to carry on studying and functioning, for them, that is more important than a small increase in risk. And that's a risk that I have taken personally. I would rather give up my wine than my HRT. And to be honest, wine makes the symptoms way worse anyway. So I think to try and get it into perspective is really helpful. There is really good information about the relative risks that I think is very objective. There's a British charity called Macmillan, which is a cancer charity, and it looks at the pros and cons and of these kinds of medications and the impact they would have on your risk profile. I would also say that not everybody can have HRT. So if you do have a personal history of cancer, which is hormone sensitive, then HRT is not appropriate. But there are other prescribable alternatives. They're probably not quite so effective, but there are alternatives. And all of these things should be done with a personal discussion with your physician.
That was super helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you for just clarifying that HRT, there are risks, but we have to weigh the options. I appreciate you sharing your personal example as a doctor, being willing to take it, and the risk for breast cancer. And so really being aware of our own bodies and getting our doctors to be able to figure out what is really going on. And you mentioned that the whole purpose is to raise, I think the question in the chat was, how do we raise those estrogen levels? And are there any alternatives if we can't do the HRT? I don't know if you found any evidence-based alternatives.
There's a little bit of evidence, and evidence is difficult. Okay, I'm aware that on the call here we've got people who are experienced complementary therapists and will have expertise, but from a purely scientific perspective, I think most evidence is for a herbal supplement, black cohosh, which has like a lot of plants and things like beans. They have like a natural form of estrogen called phytoestrogens. So some people find that by increasing the amount of whole grain and especially beans and possibly black cohosh, you can boost your estrogens. It will be a little bit. It's not as much as HRT. And HRT is still a very small amount. For example, if you start HRT
before your periods have stopped and you're still fertile, it's not enough estrogen to act as a contraceptive. It's such a tiny amount in the medication. So, for example, the contraceptive pill, you can take the contraceptive pill until you're 50 and you're getting menopause symptoms and you're still having periods, probably fertile, then the contraceptive pill is a good option because it gives you estrogen as well as contraception. So I don't want to get too technical here.
That was useful. Thank you. Thank you, Julie.
That's great. Well, Penny, I have a question for you. I know this has been my struggle as well, and I know several women talk about it during our midlife is a struggle with sleep. Sleep just disappears on us. Or waking up in the middle of the night every 3 hours or the 3 a.m. wake ups. So, what are some of the effective ways we can restore sleep in our after 40 in our midlife this season? And, what actually works other than people telling, just try to relax, which is what I hear from most people. So, what would you suggest?
Yeah, sleep is very important because if we're not getting adequate sleep, it affects so many other aspects of our lives. Definitely affects our concentration, our ability to focus. It can affect our mood. And it's really important investing in whatever it takes to get the sleep that you need. And often HRT will do the trick because a lot of what wakes us at night is either full on flushes or hot flushes that we're not actually feeling. What happens is the pituitary gland in the brain is telling your ovaries to produce estrogen, and it just churns out the hormone called follicle stimulating hormone. And that's part of what it's those waves of that hormone trying to get your ovaries to work, which produces that wakefulness. And I appreciate you saying you can't just tell them to relax, but it is going to have to be a skill that you're going to have to learn. And in my practice, if I go back 20 years, we just basically stuck all women over 50 on sleeping tablets. Madness. To be honest, they would have fared better if we had, I think that we realized that HRT was still a bit new back then, but that can certainly help in really figuring out what it takes to relax, really managing those problems with anxiety, the grief, which I think Tammy has touched on, healthy exercise, but not too close to bed. There's loads out there about sleep, and you can kind of get away with it when you're younger, but you have to major in it when you get to this time of life, and all the sort of the sleep hygiene stuff, and then also being really careful that you don't want to get into the trap of worrying about your lack of sleep, which only makes it worse. So I feel like I'd like to be able to say it's easier, but it isn't. It is a really hard thing to fix. But go after it. Spend some time, do some research, try different things. Give yourself, part of, I think, of menopause is giving yourself permission to try some different things. If it doesn't work for you, well, that's okay. Try something else.
Thank you, Penny. That was great. And I like how you said each of us are different, and some things don't work for others that will work for us. From a medical standpoint, what food and what kind of exercise would you recommend, or even alcohol habits that will actually help us during this stage? And what should we be aware of and avoid, maybe?
Okay, so definitely avoiding alcohol. Try it. If you've been having a glass of red wine because you've heard about the fantastic resveratrol and other contents, try going without for a few weeks. It can send us to sleep pretty quickly, but then we wake up and it really interferes with sleep and with our other menopause symptoms. Caffeine. Some of us are not that sensitive to caffeine when it comes to sleep, but it can really exacerbate bladder symptoms, urgency, just to go to the loo, the bladder irritability, things which I don't know about other people on the call, but I cannot eat chocolate. I used to. One of my guilty pleasures was a bar of chocolate. Well, if I eat more than a couple of pieces, the healthy thing is to have a couple of pieces of dark chocolate. who can keep a bar of chocolate in the fridge and not finish it at once? I don't have a gift, so I just don't buy it. But what happens is I have this incredible crash in energy levels of having chocolate. I love it, but then it's not worth it because it then takes me 2 hours to get myself out of the pit. So any of these kind of stimulant foods you want to avoid, and junk food, the fast release in health coaching, the slow release carbs really maintain a steady glucose levels in the bloodstream. And protein. We're recognizing more and more the importance of protein for women around menopause, but also generally, we're not so good at absorbing protein as we age. And protein's super important for our muscle strength and our kind of general well-being. So you can work out all you like, but if you're not getting enough protein, then it's important to address that. Protein, slow release carbs, caffeine, alcohol. It's all healthy stuff. Loads and loads of veg. Most of what's on your plate should be vegetable, and that doesn't mean rice. It's the leafy green veg, lots and lots of color. Eat the rainbow. That's a really easy mantra that I like to remember every week. Make sure you're eating all the colors of the rainbow to get the different nutrients that you need. And this takes preparation. Because also some of us find, especially some racial groups, they find they gain weight much more easily after menopause. And I once asked a bunch of girlfriends, we all sat around chatting away, and I asked the thin one, I said, how do you stay thin? What habits? And all of them, it came out unanimously, they all plan what they're going to eat the following day. They plan their snacks, they plan their meals, they have a plan in advance. Because if you don't have a plan and you suddenly get hungry, what are you going to reach for? I manage it. I do plan, but I just don't keep junk food in the house. So it's harder work. And this is all about giving yourself permission to take the time you need to look after yourself properly.
Love that. Yeah, really helpful. Thank you so much for that. I want to actually add to what Rita was asking because we have a question in the chat. Is there anything to improve your sexual libido? I know we have to plan what we have to eat as if we're married, planning about our sex life because that seems to be going down the drain. So that's a question that came up. Would you like to tackle that too?
Yes. It's not just a difficult time for women, it's a difficult time for husbands. And we had to learn a level of intimacy in our conversations to talk through the difficulties and hear each other and find a way to navigate those together. I can't underestimate, I can't understate that really. It's not just the girls having problems. The guys just don't like to admit it. And over the years, lots of men would come and talk to me in the surgery about their sex lives. I have to say, as a nutrition, I found that really embarrassing at first, but what I is that men actually find it easier to talk to women about their sex lives. So, wives, being able to listen, and I would highly recommend Jennifer Thompson's book on the art of intimacy in marriage. The first few chapters are very, very much about conversation and talking, because most difficulties can be overcome if you're patient with each other and vulnerable. So that means the marriage needs to be a very safe place to talk. And that's another good one for a podcast. Get Jennifer on.
Yeah.
Some menopause clinics will consider offering testosterone to help with sexual libido. It can make a difference, but again, it won't work if there are communication blocks between you. And in my experience, it's usually the communication, which is the stumbling block in that intimacy. And women after menopause, we often need more lubrication, and there's lots you can buy over the counter. You can always ask your pharmacist for advice about that. We often need more time. We even just finding the energy, to be honest, for that part of our relationship. And I think you mentioned planning. When are the best times of day for you? It's not always going to be last thing at night after a late night out. Obviously, most of us just fall into bed and just block at that stage. And the blokes included. I think I'd probably say start with talking about it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I have a question for Tammy because I think I appreciate Penny bringing up the need for conversation and intimacy. And I want to start with our intimacy with God. So many Christian women quietly think God is punishing me. I must be doing bad spiritually because everything feels so hard. From a faith perspective, how do you help women distinguish between normal biological emotional processes and actual spiritual issues? And how do you invite them to see this as a season God walks with them through and it's not a punishment? And if you can share any personal stories, because you just shared about how that phase was really hard for you and you've come out of it so beautifully and now you are sharing your wisdom with all of us.
Yeah, I think that it's funny. We do have a kind of very often really well-meaning spiritual people can get stuck in sort of an either-or mentality sometimes. Like if something bad is going on with me, that must mean that something's wrong with me spiritually, like there's something bad, something wrong. We all are prone to that because our brains are trying to make sense of things all the time. And so as we desperately grasp for what is the reason for this, why is this happening to me? Sometimes it's really simple to say, well, God must not be pleased with me. I went through a really long period of infertility when I beat myself up with that one for a really long time. God, this must be from God. He must be telling me that he doesn't trust me as a mother. I can't be a mother, which now I think is absolutely ridiculous. But I think we all have to think about, I certainly was one of those people that had to confront my theology. And that is honestly, ladies, one of the most beautiful things about this time of life. Because if we lean into it and we're willing to really learn about ourselves, there's a scripture in 1 Corinthians 8 is talking about idolatry, but it says, anyone who thinks they know something does not yet know the way they need to know. And I really think that is the theme of this time of life. It's like, wow, guess what? I actually have so much more to learn about everything, myself, my body, my brain, my theology, my own theology. Why am I thinking this way? Where is this coming from? It's such an incredible gift if we lean into this and we really are curious and learn on all these different levels. We will come out on the other side so much richer, better, wiser, deeper, broader. Oh my gosh. I really do think this is God's invitation to us to lean in and learn. So this I'm being punished thing, totally relate. Somebody once said, the deceiver nourishes your ego. Spirit God nourishes your deepest longings.
I love what Tammy's talking about, how it's so important that we lean into God and his invitation and not be deceived by there is a deception of feeding our egos, all about me, rather than this is all about a time where we can be intimate with God and with each other and learn new skills of communication.
So, Penny, I wanted to ask you this question. I know some of us, when we face these symptoms, it's either minimized or it's dismissed. In that case, how could I possibly advocate for myself if I'm going to see my doctor and I'm feeling all of these things? What specific phrases or questions do you recommend that we use when we see a health professional?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think if you have a suspicion that this is menopausal or perimenopause, then I think this could be quite basic at times. If you use their language to them, how you hear it. If you talk about mood disturbance, getting very anxious, feeling very depressed, zero energy, constant tiredness, aches and pains, in a busy surgery, it can kind of trigger the doctor to be thinking, I wonder if this is menopause. Because sometimes we're more subtle. We're too subtle when we describe what's going on. And the other thing we can do is we don't talk about the impact it has on our life. So certainly for me in the UK, I need to hear how much this is affecting somebody. Because if it's a minor irritation in their life, that's one thing. But if they haven't been to work for a week because they couldn't get out of bed, because they just felt so miserable, they just wanted everything to end, or their sex life has gone down the toilet and they discover that their husband is looking at other women, or they've not been able to work full time and now that's impacting on their mortgage payments. So those are the kind of things that get doctors' attention. So it's a combination of the symptoms, but also the impact on your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I think asking for what you want, I think a lot of times we're expecting other people to tell us what we want. That I've learned in my life when you go to someone and you ask them for what you want,
Yeah.
and be very clear to them. Thank you for that, Penny. I have a question actually now for our Dr. Pamela George. She is someone who's counseled a lot of couples and done workshops. So this question is about women are asking, how do I talk to my husband or a partner, who thinks I'm just moody or I'm overreacting? So what are some wise ways we can have this conversation that might actually help us? Pam, what do you think?
Thanks for asking me that. Just my whole menopause journey. I think I'm in post-menopause now because I feel a lot more joy. But the book that I wrote, Sparkle, was my whole journey in how to find joy. And one of the things that the L in Sparkle, each Sparkle is an acronym. So the L stands for listening to emotion, because so much healing and connection happens when we not just listen to the words, but when we really listen to the heart behind the words. So when we have perimenopause, one of those seasons when we don't always understand what we're feeling, so expecting our spouse to instantly get it, that's really unrealistic. But we can actually teach them to tune into us emotionally. So this is what I had to do in my own marriage. I had to literally train my husband to listen to emotion. When everything was hitting at once, hot flashes, irritability, grief, exhaustion, I just wanted to vent. And he immediately shifts to fix it mode and offering solutions. And I remember saying, honey, I don't need a solution right now. Can you just listen to what I'm feeling? And I just taught him to say this simple line whenever I need that. That sounds really hard. I'm with you. I just needed to hear that. I didn't need any solutions. And so the first time he said that, my whole body relaxed. Nothing about my hormones changed, but my sense of connection with him. So I think thinking about, I even had to coach him mid-conversation. Hey, that's a fixing voice. Can you try the listen to emotion voice? And over time, he became so attuned. So now even before we talk, he has to ask me, honey, what do you need? Do you need to be heard? Do you need to be hugged? Or do you need help? Because his brain wants to always help me. And sometimes I just need a hug. Sometimes I just need to be heard. And so listening, we don't naturally, our brains are not trained to listen to emotion. It's trained to listen to words. And husbands, the way God's created them, when we speak and vent, they feel disrespected. They feel like, what's going on with my wife? And we have to train them because they don't experience menopause. They just look at our behavior. So we have to learn to train them to listen to emotion. That's what I had to learn.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pam. And I really appreciate that you're my friend because I get these tips on a basis. So that's pretty good. I have one question for Tammy now. So, Tammy, when we're going through these spiritual grieving time, what are some of the practical ways you would advise us to spiritually stay connected when you're grieving, when you don't feel like it and you're hurting at the same time? And I think you did mention earlier on when you shared, if you could reiterate, what are some practical ways we can stay spiritually connected and grounded when your body is betraying you?
Oh gosh. There's so much good stuff about this out there. So there's plenty of inspiration out there. The Word of God is transformative. So I think listening to the Bible, online, listening, getting that wonderful YouVersion Bible app and letting it talk to you through your days, you're traveling or whatever. I find breath prayers are really helpful. Like I have a whole running list in my phone of short phrases from the Bible that speak to me. Things like, God is within her, she will not fall. And that's talking about the kingdom, but I take it for, me, my family, my house, my God is within her, she will not fall. I practice yoga quite often and I just breathe those prayers all the time. And sometimes that's all I can do during the really hard menopause times. I think it's whatever your standard is for staying close to God. I think just even trusting that Romans 8, the Spirit intercedes for us with words that groans cannot express. We may not be in investing intentionally the amount of time or quality that we used to or are able to, but just the confidence that God and His Spirit do not let go of us. They are holding on to us. And to live in that confidence helps a lot because even if you do have a little bit of time, you get fret wasted by worrying, oh, God doesn't want to see me because I've been so unfaithful or whatever. There's really, if we could learn to not go there, getting outside is so valuable. Outside in nature, just making sure we're exercising because that's so important for our well-being. I'm sure that was part of Penny's encouragement. And just listening to good podcasts. I have one that I love, Faith Filled Therapy podcast, that just reminds me that it's God's word in there and it's valuable and it's not about quantity, but quality. So there's so many things we can do.
Thank you so much. I want to end with this. If you're listening today and thinking something's wrong with me, I don't recognize myself, I feel lost, I feel scared, we want to hear this truth. We're not broken. We're not failing. We're not weak. We are changing. And change is not the enemy like Tammy was talking about. We don't want to be deceived by the enemy. Our body is shifting. Our brain is adapting. Our emotions are signaling that something sacred actually is happening inside us. And a transition that is normal, God-designed, and deeply human. And thank you so much. So even though the season may feel like winter, winter is never the end of the story. Winter is a preparation season. And I just want to encourage each one of you to find a friend to go through this journey. And I appreciate Rita and I being able to talk about these stuff. So find a friend, join a community.
We have come to the end of our masterclass. I really want to thank all of you for joining us from all over the world. I appreciate you making time for us. I hope that this time has been helpful and the tools and the tips and the insights that we got from the specialists and the experts is useful to you. I know it certainly is useful for me, and I'm going to remember the things that we learned today. We plan to have a sequel, hopefully with our men folk joining us next time. So look out for that. Yeah, we do have a lot of free offers and resources. You can get in touch with us. Do like and subscribe to our channel as we continue to support women in their journey.
Yes, thank you, Rita. That was such an incredible moment of global sisterhood. Like you said, we had people from Ukraine, UK, India, Canada, across Europe, even Russia. And women were connecting across cultures, languages, time zones. And we say we are in this together. Thank you, Penny, for bringing such compassionate medical clarity. Thank you, Tammy, for guiding us through the emotional and spiritual layers with such tenderness. And for every woman who showed up today, your presence matters, your questions matter, your experience matters, and you are not walking this alone.
Signing off from Midday Musing. Bye.